Hey, welcome to my first Halo Wars 2 video in quite a little bit here. I can just gonna say right now it's mostly just because of how terrible the meta was. Every time I tried to record something, it was just garbage. Like the whole meta with Sergeant Ford was just bad. But nonetheless, we're here now with our first take on Yapyap here. He came out a couple from the time this was recorded a couple hours ago, and I played a little bit with him. Saw some footage of him. I watched the Breaking the Clutch guys do their live stream a little bit, and so I got to see some of the strategies they were running. Threw a couple out there myself for them to use, just to kind of see how it would be implemented. So we're going to start with just kind of going over how some of the units have looked so far and what you can expect, and then we'll move on from there to the powers and whatnot. So I want to start right off the bat with the methane wagon. You'll see in the gameplay in the background that I didn't use the methane wagon because I kind of forgot it existed. The gameplay you're seeing in the background is just like the first game I played with Yapyap. I just went into a random Team War game, and I don't even think we ended up winning that game because I was just kind of messing around and then kind of ditched his units after a little bit because I didn't know what I was doing. But anyways, the methane wagon, from what I've seen, is very strong. Adds a lot of I don't know. I don't quite know why it's so strong, but it's really good in army comp and especially early game. Just mixing it in with if you have a couple of your grunt goblin leaders, a handful of methane wagons, and just a bunch of fodder to take some shots or whatever, you'll have a really solid early game with that. So definitely include some methane wagons into your early game army comp because they're very viable and probably the best unit that he has as far as just the timing of when you use it. And for some reason, the methane just really takes your army to the next level. So moving on from the wagon, I want to go over the Grunt Goblin. I was worried personally that the Grunt Goblin was going to be very overpowered starting off. I saw that you could get 3 of them and that they had needler shots, and I was like, oh man, like this just kind of screams like overpowered. However, Grunt Goblins are actually not overpowered. They're pretty balanced. Their damage output is solid. They don't take forever to die. You just kind of have to focus fire them a little bit. I will say though that their Y ability, it drops this little like circle of healing. I think it makes you invincible for a second, but it also it heals you up like immediately. It is like super powerful heal, just a quick powerful heal. I saved my buddy's base. I should probably include that clip in the background. His base was getting annihilated, and I just threw my goblins over there and pressed the Y button, and they got it back up to like 75% like in 2 seconds. It was crazy. So the goblin healing ability, definitely something to try out and see how you can use it, because I really see it being something you can do in the middle of a big engagement and just boom, pop a couple Y abilities and it's going to heal up your army immediately. So try those out. That should be interesting. Moving on to some of the lesser units, I want to go over the Grunt Riders, or the Grunt Brute Riders. Those are very strong against buildings, which, I mean, they're building killers, so it makes sense. But I tested it in a little skirmish match to just kind of see what a handful of them would do. I think I made like 4 or 5 and was rinsing buildings. I mean, I didn't even have to throw anything else out. Handful of those things were just taking out mini bases super quick, and then I went over to the main and popped off a couple supply pads before they could die. So those things are really strong, especially with that plasma, the plasma hand upgrade. It's super strong, and I strongly would recommend testing out some of those compositions of Brute Riders. It's similar to the like the Colony Rush with the what are those? The Goliaths and the Jump Pack Brutes with like Atriox or whatever. I think it's a viable play right now, especially in like a 2s match. I could definitely see Riders, or even a 3s match on it. Twos or 3s, I could really see that Rider play really coming into fruition. If say the other 2 or 3 people have their armies across the map, you just send all your Riders in while they're distracted by your teammates, and I mean, you'll lay waste to those bases. They're so good, and they're cheap. You can get them on Tech 1. I mean, they're solid units, and they're pretty okay against infantry too. Just better against buildings. But moving on to kind of the hot topic with Yapyap is the fodder, the free grunts that he makes. The grunt fodder are everyone. Everyone I heard was very concerned about the fodder being super overpowered. They're free, you can just spam them like crazy, and my take on them, from what I have seen and how I use them and what I saw them do, fodder are not overpowered. However, they are extremely frustrating because you can just spam them, and if you go against 2 Yapyaps, you're constantly having to spend resources on stopping these grunt fodder waves after waves when they don't have to spend anything and they can just keep upgrading. So, but again, the grunt fodder don't actually do that much damage. Even in numbers, like, the grunt fodder just don't do a lot of damage. So I would caution to say that they are overpowered by any means. I think they're just new, and people are kind of having a hard time figuring out how to exactly counter them. But I could see, like, ghosts would be very good against grunt fodder, just microing around a little bit, and the ram ability ghosts would be great, and probably any other scout choppers would be good. Jackrabbits would probably be okay too. I would just say the choppers and ghosts would be a little better just because you can ram them and take them out a little bit easier, but jackrabbits would work fine too. But Marines from the UNSC side work great. I mean, they're fodder. You're supposed to be able to kill them with anything. But I would say that out of all of these starting things that you could counter them with, just even throwing up like 1 turret is going to take out a lot of fodder. So don't worry too much about fodder. If you're playing triple Yapyap, maybe you're worrying about it a little bit more, because that is 3 armies of fodder that you have to deal with. So, I mean, whenever you're playing Yapyap, you just need to make sure to make units right off the bat. Like, you need to make something that can counter them. So long as you don't let the fodder take control of your main, which you should never let that happen. So long as you just keep them from getting too much engaged with your main base, you should be fine. They're not great. They're just there to take some shots and, be a distraction, honestly. But moving on to the heavy grunts. The heavy grunts are interesting. I haven't actually seen a lot of usage from them. I use them a little bit. I tested out a little bit with them. From what I have seen, they're pretty solid against air units. I was taking out Hornets fairly easily with the heavy grunts in some testing I was doing, just in some skirmishes. But they were very solid against air. And I think they have a green thing, like a green, of all the, like, how they are against infantry and vehicles and buildings or whatever. Like, I think they have a green thing, like they're good against air. So it was good to see that they are actually decent against air. Other than that, I don't really have an official judgment on them. I haven't really used them enough, and again, it's only been a couple hours, so I haven't really gotten to play with them a whole lot. I'm just kind of taking bits and pieces of what I've seen. And again, just another shout out to the Breaking the Clutch guys for doing a live stream today. I was able to participate in there and also get to see how they were using Yapyap. So a lot of this analysis is coming from the way that they played him and the way that I played him, and just kind of seeing what has been working and what hasn't been. But as far as just a conclusion with the heavy grunts, that's for you to decide. I think that they're viable. I don't know how great they're going to be after early stages of Tech 2. You might be able to mix them into if you have an infantry ball, maybe Hunters, Rangers, and heavy grunts would be good, because then you're countering vehicles, infantry, and air, and then throwing some engineers in. That might be a viable play, especially with the goblins coming in. So mess around with that, and if you find something cool, let me know. Tweet it at me, put it in the comments, whatever. Just let me know, because I'm interested on what people come up with for that. And the last point I want to talk about is Yapyap's leader powers. Got to test them out a little bit, and they're really interesting. A lot of people were very concerned about the please don't shoot me leader power, which if you don't know, that leader power, it essentially makes it so nobody can attack for like, I think 15 seconds. And then when you get the tier 2 upgrade, it's like 20 or 25, I think. I don't remember. I don't know if I think it's 20 seconds. But either way, it makes it so just nobody can attack for that long. All your units are kind of staring at each other like, hey, buddy, in 15 seconds, I'm going to start shooting you again. It's interesting, but it is very useful if you are getting caught off guard. You can throw that down real quick and kind of get your units back in order and try to, counter push or whatever. So that leader power is about as good as expected. Very annoying when you have more than one Yapyap on your team, or on the other enemy team, I should say. They're just very annoying leader powers. I think another important one is the shade turret drop. And I have a little bit of a different opinion than the other guys that were using them, the Breaking the Clutch guys. From what I've seen from shade turrets, they are decent. I'm not I'm not saying that other people are saying they're overpowered. I'm cautious to hype them up too much, solely because I used them frequently in the background footage that you're seeing. If I include any, I'll try to remember to include some of that in there. But the shade turrets, they don't deal a lot of DPS. You drop 4 of them with your first leader power, and then when you upgrade it, you get 6. And the DPS is, it's decent, but it's not anything I'd be super concerned about. Like I'm not, unless you have, weak units, like if you have a bunch of like Marines or snipers, I could see it being a bit of a problem. But, honestly, shade turrets, I have found help the most if you are pushing. It's just kind of some added support that can, like, say you're going against a shielded banished base, you can drop down some shade turrets and just kind of keeps constant, even more DPS on that shield. So that way you're keeping it from, recharging as much, and you can even drop them around the shield generator so that they hopefully shoot the shield generator. With 6 of them, listen, if you have 2 or 3 Yapyaps on your team and you drop down 18 shade turrets, once all of you upgrade it, that will be a little bit ridiculous. 18 shade turrets would be nonsense. I'm not saying that in mass amounts they aren't nonsense. I'm saying just if you have one Yapyap dropping 4 to 6 shade turrets, they are good turrets. Just don't expect them to like wipe out an army. Like I did some testing with them and I was like, okay, they're okay, but don't go too crazy thinking that they're gonna save your army. Just use them often, because that was the next thing I was going to go into, is that it feels like his leader powers just recharge super fast. Like I'll use his methane like storm thing, and I feel like it recharged really fast after I used it, compared to other last tier leader powers. But or methane party, that's what it's called, methane party. But Methane Party, speaking of which, Methane Party, really cool. I like Methane Party a lot, because it's basically like having those methane wagons, only you just have a whole storm of it surrounding your units. It's a really cool thing that I haven't quite mastered yet, because it's only been out for a couple hours, but I really enjoyed using it and thought that it was a cool... It really helped with these huge engagements where you just don't even know what's happening. There's just so many units and so many colors on the screen that your head starts to hurt, but dropping that methane party can kind of help with that. Other than that, there weren't any other powers. Oh, yes, I should say the grunt drop. You can drop in like a heavy grunt and a methane wagon and some other stuff. That I would probably switch with the shade turret, because having the drop of those units at the basically the second leader point that you can get is a little bit... I did see some of that come into play, and it was a kind of nonsense. Like it, 3 minutes in, you have like half your pop, or not half your population, but like you have a sizable chunk of your population like veteran seed good units. Like that's one of the things I'm concerned about the most, is just seeing rushes from Yapyap and then having like 2 drops of those come in would be very annoying. But those are my first impressions. Overall, I think that he is fairly balanced, just has some reworking that needs to be done with some of his leader powers. But as far as the units go themselves, I really think that they're pretty balanced and not actually that hard to counter once you understand how Yapyap works. It's a little hard at first because he's new and we don't really have anything to like hard counter him. But I do think that I don't know if it's necessarily a buff, but the slightly increased viability of tier 2 vehicles like Warthogs and Marauders, after Cyclops and Hunters stop doing quite as much damage to them, I do think that they are a little bit more viable and might be able to come into play. But I mean, let me know what you think. Tell me that if you don't agree with anything I said, then go ahead and tell me, and I'll take it into consideration. But these are just kind of my first impressions from something that got released a couple hours ago. So thank you for watching. If you're new here, subscribe. And, I'm just going to preface this now. I do not just make Halo content. You'll notice on my channel I have other content. Right now the Pokemon Crystal playthrough is hilarious. That is probably my favorite thing I'm making right now. It is a super fun time. And there's some other stuff that is coming out soon too. So just watch out for those things. If you want to stick around, great. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next video.